I started my rescue diving certification for all the wrong reasons, and now that I've completed the course, it has completely changed the way that I think about diving. Because Gunner, my 13-year-old son, is my dive buddy, I'd wanted to get my rescue certification for a while, and I figured I'd be learning like basic life-saving skills that focused on scuba scenarios and accidents. So I talked to John, my instructor and the owner of Desert Reef in Midland, Texas, and I enrolled in the course. I finished my e-learning, and then because we're 2 hours from the nearest open water dive site, we plan to do this in 2 separate trips about a month apart. Skills 1 through 6 on the first trip, and then 7 and 8 on the final trip. This video isn't going to be about all the individual skills or scenarios, but rather how my mindset shifted because of the panic diver on the surface scenario and the surfacing and unresponsive diver. To start off, I'm extremely confident in my abilities as a diver and a swimmer. And throughout my life, I've already rescued people several times in swimming scenarios. I've never in my life felt panicked, scared, or uncomfortable in the water, ever. Even when things have gone wrong while I was scuba diving, I've kept it in control. So I may have gone into this training thinking that I wasn't going to be particularly challenged, and I definitely didn't expect to have the complete mental shift that I did. Let's get into panic diver on the surface because this is where it all kind of kicked in, and boy, did it ever. First off, a good buddy of mine was acting as the victim in this scenario, and he's just a lot bigger guy than I am, but I didn't even give it a second thought, and that was mistake number 1. I tried to get his attention, and when I couldn't, I dropped down below him and behind him and let him kind of just sit there and tire out for a bit, thinking that he wasn't in danger, he wasn't drowning, and he'd be a lot easier to handle if he was a little bit tired. When he slowed down a bit, I came up behind him and I went into the tank cradle, and as soon as I got my hand on his inflator, the fight was on. He rolled over on me and he proceeded to climb me like a ladder. He stripped my reg, he stripped my mask, and he was drowning me. My very first thought was to hit him and basically like incapacitate him. All of this was happening while I was being drowned. Mistake number 1 was definitely overconfidence. And I can tell you that humble pie tastes freaking horrible. I was bleeding from a couple scratches on my face, and my adrenaline was bumping the rev limiter, and I sat there in the water after all this was over thinking about how the hell this just happened and why I couldn't control it. For the first time in my life, my water and scuba skills were up to the task, or at least they failed me in this individual skill. And it was at that time that a thought started to creep into my head about how dangerous a panic diver is, and almost taking a stance of like indifference towards him, that my life was the most important thing. I played that scenario over and over multiple times and asked what I could have done better, what I could change. Could I even rescue someone that much larger than me without having to put them to sleep or putting myself in serious danger? It was a way of thinking that I really didn't like, and it made me feel super uncomfortable. I then asked to do the skill over and over again until we got it right, and eventually I was able to control him from the tank cradle position, but I'm still unsure how that would play out in a real world scenario. But I do have an idea about how I'll do it, and it's something that I'll drill in the pool every night when we're training, and it's something I plan on working with Gunner on as well. And by the way, the other rescue diver trainee, he didn't fare any better. We both had our butts kicked that day. That was the last skill of the day, and I spent time talking to John, my instructor, and trying to get over the ego death that I had just experienced. Back in the water the following morning, we're doing a simulated search and recovery. And then we're supposed to get the unresponsive diver that we found up to the surface. And this is when it really changed for me. Remember that just the day before, I just started to have this mindset that victims could be really dangerous and taking a self-preservation stance, which you should, but it can't ever come from a place of indifference. So we do our search, and as we're approaching the diver who's unresponsive, I don't see a simulation or a scenario. They have set this thing up perfectly. They've covered her in silt and grass and murked out the area immediately surrounding her. And in my mind, she wasn't an instructor playing a part. She was a corpse, a human life that was gone, a soul that had moved on. I saw Gunner there, my friends that dive with me, another human who, if they aren't dead, they're on death's door. I had a visceral reaction to it. Like fight or flight kicked in and my adrenaline spiked. I took some deep breaths, slowed down, and we were able to finish the skill. But I was impacted deeply by that, and my mindset shifted completely. This is when I knew what it meant to be a rescue diver. The implications, the responsibility, the cost. Gunner didn't make this trip with me, so I drove the 2 hours home, and I don't think I even turned on the radio. I just sat there in my thoughts and went over everything that had happened. When I got home, I started researching and interviewing and editing the Dylan Harrison video that I did about the scuba tragedy in Texas. And my heart absolutely broke for her. If you saw that video, throughout the whole process, I began to feel like very close to her, and I actually felt like I had lost her, or that I was part of it. I had officially entered a darker relationship with the sport that I love so much and I'm so passionate about. I spent time talking to John about what it meant and how I felt, and I stayed in that headspace for an entire month until our next rescue training trip that was just this past weekend. All of this happened right before I went to DEMA. So there I am sitting with everything I just experienced in rescue training, and then we fly straight into one of the biggest weeks we've ever had as a brand. And DEMA was absolutely insane. We came home with more gear companies and more resorts wanting to partner with us than ever before. Brands wanting to hide coins, resorts wanting to be part of it, part of the hunt in some of the most exotic dive locations on the planet. All of that momentum was happening at the same time that I was processing like what Rescue Diver had just done to my mindset. It was a lot to carry. I came into this trip with a completely different thought process, actively trying to slow down my thoughts and my breathing and analyzing each scenario as it played out. Slow is steady, steady is fast. We were pushed hard in our final dives for skills 7 and 8. And after we properly completed them, it wasn't even close to being over. The entire second day was chaotic and exhausting, responding to simulated rescue scenario after scenario, just over and over and over throughout the day. By the end of it, I was tired, I was sore, and just about as proud as I've ever been of myself. Was every rescue perfect? No. But my new mindset had taken over, and it's one that makes me a better diver. It makes Gunner safer, and it makes me an asset to anyone that's in the water with me. I even unknowingly jumped into the middle of other people's training and helped I jumped in on rescues that I wasn't even supposed to be a part of. I wouldn't say that I was chasing certs, but in the beginning, I definitely didn't enter into rescue with the right mindset. But after having my butt kicked and the rescues and recoveries that we did that were so real in my mind, I'd say that every one of you listening to this who's considering rescue training should think really hard about it. Expect to have a mindset shift, and it's by far the most rewarding training I've done so far. Do I move on to Dive Master? Not for a good long time. Maybe one day, maybe, I'm not sure, but I do think I might start doing some cave training if I could talk my wife into it. I want to give a huge shout out to Desert Reef in Midland, Texas for making this training so challenging and real, for being there to support me and to mentor me. So Gunner was able to make the second trip, and we got to dive with gear from some of our partners. We both tested our new Sherwood gear, and we both tested our Dive Volk SeaTouch 4 Max housings. Those reviews are up next, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna be giving away one of the housings and an upcoming coin prize, so stay tuned.